was the target of an arson attack. And you may remember that American pastor jailed in Iran, Saeed Abedini, now says he's been beaten and refused treatment because of his faith. So we're seeing these stories more and more, Eric, that are popping up. This is the third one now. It's very disconcerting. I know, Bob, you're also very passionate about it. What should be the U.S. response from the State Department?
Well, I'll tell you what it shouldn't be. Look, if you watch Fox, you watch this show, we warned about this. This is a Muslim Brotherhood win in Egypt. Mohammed Morsi comes from the Muslim Brotherhood. He was the Muslim Brotherhood candidate. Within months of Morsi winning the election, he turned the Egyptian constitution into a legal system that's based on Sharia. Since then, there's been intimidating Coptic Christians. There have been blowing up churches. There have been suicide bombings. Christians are being persecuted in Egypt. In the meantime, Morsi is the guy who called Israelis, now I got to read this, occupiers in Palestinian lands and warmongering descendants of apes and pigs. Is this the guy that we want to give $1.6 billion a year in foreign aid? Is this the guy that we want to give F-16s, 200 Abrams tanks? And certainly is this the guy that on the day sequestration hit, the same very day, Secretary of State Kerry handed over a check for $250 million to these guys?
You know, this is Holy Week. I know most radical Muslims don't read the Bible, but do yourself a favor and look at it. You know what happened to Nero, the last person that persecuted Christians? Well, that's going to happen to you. And I'm telling you, I've been on this now for 6 months. You all have got to stop this, or we're fine. You want to get face to face with us? This is the way to do it. Leave people alone. You're cowards. It's worse than that. You've got you're not religious. You're disgracing Muhammad by what you're doing by doing this. And you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. And you ought to be in jail.
All right.
Thank you. Tough note to follow.
Yeah. And on that note, okay,
what do you think about the aid, though?
At this stage of the game, I hate to say this, but I would like to believe that the military there still is the only thing that keeps us from the Muslim Brotherhood completely taking over that country. And they get most of the aid, so I would say we'd be very, very careful about taking that aid away from them.
Is there any question in your mind, Robert, that Mohammed Morsi has made a pact, a deal, jumped into bed with the Iranians?
With the Iranians?
Yeah.
Oh, no, of course not. But,
so we want to send tanks and F-16s and money to a group
are the generals in Egypt who would not cut a deal with the Iranians. And frankly, the only thing that keeps Morsi from going too far are those generals, and they're watching him very carefully. You want to see Egypt go back to a dictatorship? Very easy. Go too far, and the generals will stop in and say, that's it, get out.
Right.
This has happened in Egypt before. It'll happen again.
Can we just rename the Middle East the Middle Ages?
Yeah.
That's all. No, the Arab Spring for Christians is more like a nuclear winter. And can you hear the outcry from the international media? You can't. It's not even like 1% of Abu Ghraib. It's like as long as there are... The only time the world gets angry over injustices if it's committed by the United States. However, everyone else can act like savages. They can kill Christians, that's okay. But if you're a nervous flyer on a U.S. Air jet over an imam, you're a monster. But meanwhile, every tolerance merchant in the United States who marches for everything ignore this sort of stuff because they don't want to seem as though they're intolerant of other cultures. Because remember how all cultures are supposed to be the same? Everybody's the same? That's the biggest lie. Some cultures are better than others.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Dana.
No, Bob, I just want to take you to task for this. The generals may have their idea on what they think the ruling, who's going to rule the country. But at the bottom line, if Morsi can get the Constitution changed to reflect Sharia law, I think he's in power right now. I don't think it's wise to send him billions and billions of dollars of our money and our technology.
And let me just tell you, I think that you'll find that the people who are against the Sharia law are the generals. There will not be Sharia law. If there is, then there's going to be a lot of trouble. But here's the other thing. I want to say, pick up what Greg said. I want to know where there are. I have defended moderate Muslims on this show, and every chance I've had. There's 110 billion, I think, of you. Where are you?
Billion.
Billion? Yes.
100 billion?
1.1 billion Muslims.
Okay.
Now, if you believe that the Prophet was somebody who believed that you didn't engage women, children, and others unless you were in a battle face-to-face with you, then what these people are doing in your name in your name is doing against what Muhammad said, rise up and say something. They're not that tough.
I think that there are moderate leaders, and moderate is a relative term in the Middle East and across some of Southeast Asia. I think the question for us is, what can the United States do at this point to protect the Christians that are there and our national interests and those of our allies? I think the first thing is the possibility of making the aid money contingent on the protection of people, especially Christians, and the freedom of religion. That would be a number one priority, I think. And however they define it, Secretary of State Kerry and others would have to figure out what does that mean. But I think that to make the aid contingent on that. The second thing is, and I know they say they do this, but we don't hear a lot about it, is if we are really going to support those that wanted the Arab Spring, are we all in when it comes to democracy and democracy promotion and helping them create leaders that can allow people the freedom that they need? And that was my third point, which is this really comes down to freedom, both social, economic, and cultural freedom. They have very few jobs. I mean, we're talking about jobs in America, but there's very few jobs. So you have a lot of anger and a lot of built-up frustration that is all being channeled into the hatred that is perverting the Quran, in which Muhammad actually, in his life, married a Christian to show that tolerance is what the world of Islam could be about.
You know, one thing to be said about this is that we've got to be careful here. We have promoted democracy as the best form of government. And it is. It is. And the fact of the matter is, whether we like it or not, the people of Egypt democratically elected the Muslim Brotherhood Party to run that country. Now, we can't have it both ways. That's the problem. I mean, when we say be democratic and they do that, or they elect Hamas in Gaza, well,
Bob, Morsi is from the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
Hamas was a offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes, no, I
But
understand.
you know, about Hamas, one of the reasons that they won was because that they promised that they would do basic services like pick up the trash in the street and things that they were able to come forward on. Mubarak in Egypt was always concerned about the Muslim Brotherhood and didn't want to allow for elections and try to suppress them so much, and that led to even more problems, and then eventually his ouster.
But that's
now
how the
it's
Muslim
we're worse
Brotherhood got
off than
powerful.
when he was in. That's the problem.
No,
because
but
now we're
wait
dealing
a
with the
second.
Muslim Brotherhood and funding them.
It was the way the Muslim Brotherhood rose to power was they did those very things for poor people. They picked up the garbage. They started schools. They did civic things, and that's how they got powerful.
Well,
and in the meantime,
that's up for debate. That's up for debate.
Well,
it's clearly up for debate. That's your interpretation of how the Muslim Brotherhood gained their power. My interpretation is they did it by supporting terrorism, by exporting terrorism. This is not a. They're not garbage picker-uppers, Bob.
Yeah,
they are people tied to some of the most deadly terrorist attacks on the globe. What would be really nice, I'm sorry, Kimberly, what would be really nice if CARE, the Center for American Islamic Relations, would come out and say, look, that was wrong, denounce this. But again, it's CARE always saying, look at us, we're being persecuted here in America. How about you saying they made a big mistake over there and they need to apologize for it? But CARE, silent. I emailed CARE today. No response.
They're not that into you, just saying. CARE sees an email from you, and they're like, not that guy
They need to do a lot more than apologize. They need to pick up the people that burned these buildings and killed these people and put them into jail for the rest of their lives or hang them.
Okay, well, there's a couple other developments with Christians under attack in the Middle East, and one is in Libya, in Benghazi. 4 foreign Christians were arrested in that city for disseminating Christian literature, Greg, and so they were imprisoned and kept in there. Basically, they're supposed to be getting out.
Well, I just want to go just make one simple point. When you're a kid and you learned about Egypt, it was like pretty awesome. It was like a really cool place. They had Cleopatra, pharaohs. They had the pyramids, right?
Yep.
They made those pyramids. It was like a really cool place you wanted to go to. Now this kind of like ancient wisdom is replaced with angry mobs. And what's the lesson there? And the lesson is that can happen. That the world is an unstable place, and things change, and things can go from wonderful and amazing to something horrible. You look at Rome, you look at Egypt, you look at the United States is what I'm getting at. And it's a very important lesson to understand that democracies and the world is a very fragile place, and it's very important that you are armed.
Oh, very nice. Nice transition. But let's not forget how
Thanks for letting me talk.
How they built the pyramids and the various amazing pieces of architecture in Egypt. They did it on the backs of people who were starving, who were dying doing it. So there's nothing.
I'm glad
glory in
you
that.
had those dreams when you were a kid. Haven't been there fairly recently. It's still hot, still got a lot of flies and a lot of dust.
You know who might be able to actually help make a difference for the Christians around the world that are being persecuted in these places is the new Pope.
Exactly. Good eye point.
So he is a world leader. He's the leader of the church, but he's coming with a fairly good reception so far. It's unclear how he is going to use any of his political power or words of persuasion, but that could be the fresh start that some of these countries need to be able to look at him.
He
Still should have been Muslim, though.
Excellent point.
Do you think Mohammed Morsi is going to let the Pope walk through the square in Cairo? Does anyone honestly think that's going to happen?
I think it would help a lot. And beyond that, I'd be careful. All you Christian ministers out there, when you go up and you preach on Sunday, I would say something if I were you about this. You're being very quiet yourselves.
And they'll be dragged into a mosque and killed.
I'm talking about here in the United States.
Oh, well, how about Care? Why don't we start with Care?
Oh, my gosh, here he goes again. Bowling loves to email Care. Let me email him again during the break.
Ibrahim Hooper, email me
by
back,
the way,
will
it
you,
is
please?
it is our fear in America, and if we just decided to be more like them, they would be nicer to us. I still think that we should have a Muslim Pope, and we should all convert.
You've been recruited for those videos, right?
Yes, I have.
All right.